Hey everybody, my name's Keith. I'm from the Alberta Artist, and thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to try to do more of these educational art videos in the future. I've done a few podcasts on the channel and then kind of took a break because I've been busy with commissions, but I really need to get around doing more work and helping out a little bit. So that's what we're going to do today. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about artistic style. I think it's probably one of the most important and often overlooked pieces of moving forward in a career in the arts. I know that I spent a lot of time working on my own artistic style, and so hopefully what I can provide at least is another opinion as to how you guys can actually make those changes for yourself. So let's talk a little bit about what artistic style is and why I think that you need one. So an artistic style is basically a unique way to create art in any medium, and over time it becomes recognizable as your own. It can be obvious, like Picasso or Sargent or Rembrandt, or they can be subtle. Like you can see the difference in like wildlife artists I'm a huge fan of, Robert Bateman, John Vanovich, David Shepard. The differences between those three might be a little more subtle, but if you're familiar with the way that their strokes are laid down, their colors, and the texture and the definition and the contrast, it's very easy to pick out their work after a little bit of familiarity with it. So I think developing an artistic style requires you to be brave. It's going to ask you to try mediums that maybe you aren't familiar with, maybe try styles that you don't necessarily paint right now, but identify with. And it requires research and attention and your time. You need to put in some time into this work. It doesn't necessarily just come by itself. I've watched and read nearly every article and video on creating your own style, and I have yet to find one that really provides proper steps in moving forward. A lot of artists will tell you not to deliberately try to find that style. I definitely disagree with that, although I do understand where they're coming from. They don't want you to force it. They don't, they want it to come naturally over time. But the thing is, you don't necessarily have, as a new artist, you might not feel like you have 5 to 10 years to do all of that. And it's easy for them to say that. They've already got their own style. They're already selling their own work. It's easy for them to say, be patient and, put in the time and your style will develop naturally, right? I feel like we could definitely work through that and speed up that process a little bit. For lack of a better word, a hack. I think a unique visual style is easily one of the most important things that you are going to learn in order to become a successful artist. If you have tried advertising online, getting into galleries, getting juried into shows, I am sure that you can attest to the fact that competition is incredibly fierce. I literally cannot count the number of people that have told me they were turned down by a show or a gallery because their work was too similar to what was already being shown there. And think about it, you may be a very competent artist, but if you're relatively new to the scene and your work kind of just blends in with what so many other artists are creating, why would a gallery or a show be interested in your work? They're looking for diversity. They're looking for excitement in potential buyers that attend that show. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about what we can do to move forward in finding our own style. So I think it's important to remember that it's not a destination, but a journey. And I know that that's, one of those just trope lines that gets thrown out everywhere. But I do want to be clear that the steps I'm going to outline are not just to create a style and then you're done, right? Like, those are tools to help you find a unique body of work that influences you. But it's not just going to be like a quick, oh, there's my style, right? It's going to take a little bit of work, but hopefully less than 5 to 10 years. So you can actually speed up this process simply by watching this video and becoming more aware that your goal is to find that unique style and vision. Just knowing that you are going to be diving into the visual world in search of things that move you is literally going to help all by itself. Step 2 is researching visual media with intention. That kind of ties back to step 1, like I said, because just by paying attention to this stuff, things are going to happen faster. And when I say research visual media with intention, that means that you're not watching it for entertainment necessarily. It can be both. If you're going to a movie, you might have a great time, but while you're there, I also want you to start paying attention to the cinematography, the artistic style, maybe the costumes, maybe the way that the director is framing a shot. You don't have to be interested in filming video, but you can certainly take a lot of the things that you see from all different kinds of media. And I would start creating like an online scrapbook, or print out some of the images and stick them on your desk, or just surround yourself with work that really speaks to you. And it's important too that work that speaks to you, you may not know yet why it speaks to you. It may be very different than the work that you're doing, like not even close to the current way you're creating, but it moves you. So like I said, don't try to figure it out. Just know that it does, and start collecting that information. So maybe I'll use some of my influences, and maybe I'll try to make this a little bit more meaningful. I'll pop some of their work up here, and then we can kind of look at that. So for me, these are just a few. There's probably hundreds if I really sat down, because I've been doing this for a long time as well. But movie-wise, I'm a big fan. Lately, Blade Runner, the last Blade Runner, I thought really fit a lot of the style that I like. They shoot to expose the ambiance in the room, and a lot of the time the subjects are cast in shadow, or even in a silhouette. There's a black and white movie called The Lighthouse. I really enjoyed some of the cinematography in that. I liked the aesthetic style. Also, it's kind of the same as Blade Runner. There were a lot of shots that had, that really utilized light and dark. Even if you go back to old movies, Casablanca has some amazing shots in it as well. So every time I go to the theater, every time I rent, not that I've been to the theater in like a year, but every time I rent a movie or watch a TV show, I'm 50-50. I'm watching it and I'm enjoying it, but I'm also really paying attention to what I'm seeing on screen. Artist, I already mentioned, like Robert Bateman, John Banovich, Terry Isaac. I just immerse myself in a lot of art. What I will actually do is sometimes I'll just go to Google and I will type in amazing art, hit enter and hit photos, and then I'll just start scrolling down and looking for pieces of art that move me, right? For me, it's very much about tone, shadow, highlight, and a lot of contrast in between those tones. Less about necessarily black and white. I paint mostly in black and white, but the stuff that I like, I love color work as well. But usually it is those dark tones that pull me in. And then I'll click on that photo and I'll find out who it is. And then, I might Google them and see what other work they've got. And then I might print off a couple of those photos and stick them in a scrapbook or save them to, an online scrapbook or something like that. And just, call it inspiration or something like that. And return to those again and again and again, okay? And I'll go into a little bit more about my next steps after that. Anyone that's looked at my work will also know that I am a big fan of photography. I shot for many, many years and still do. A lot of my influences come from there. Nick Brandt is an African wildlife photographer who shoots in Kenya, and I love the mood of his work. It has been one of the major influences. Also David Yarrow, if you're not familiar with David Yarrow, he is also a wildlife black and white photographer. One of the things that I took from his work, he likes to shoot everything at a lower angle. So normally, when you look at a lot of photographs, especially because they are actually out there, they're, taking pictures of actual things, right? They're not sketching. They're standing above the animal, and you can tell just because they're just a bit above it. Like, it's not as bad as like the standing over your dog portrait that a lot of people take in their kitchen, but they're still above, whatever it is that is, they're shooting. David Yarrow has this very low angle approach where he is much lower than the animals. He uses like camera traps and stuff like that so that, the animal comes by and, he's not there interfering with it or anything like that. But regardless, that was one of those very powerful things that when I started looking at his work and I looked at it enough, I realized that so much of it was at this low angle. And then I started to ask myself why, and I actually did some research, why is it so powerful? And it's because it's unfamiliar to us. We're not used to being at eye level with a leopard or, or a bison or anything like that. So I try to paint with that lower field of view. I'm also a huge fan of Ansel Adams. Most photographers that would be watching this would know who that is, but if you're a painter, you might not. He's a very famous black and white artist from years back, and I definitely recommend looking at some of his work. Also, just a shout out to Kevin Mullins, who I've never met or spoken to personally, but he is a British wedding photographer. And once again, if you've looked at my work, you will know my work is all wildlife. The only similarity that Kevin Mullins and I have is that he shoots in black and white. But his storytelling and the mood of his work that I discovered like over this whole COVID break while I was doing a bunch of research. Some of his work, I'm going to put it up here, but it's just staggering. It's just beautiful. And so the mood and the feel and the story, that is something else that I'm trying to weave into my work now. Okay. And then just a couple of other quick ones. Like I even follow graphic design. Armin Hoffman is really good. Even computer games. Like I'm a gamer as well. And there's a couple of computer games that I play. One is called Kentucky Route Zero, and the other one is called Limbo. They both have, like I said, I'll pop up some screens here, but they both have that same aesthetic, right? That very light to dark, a lot of shadows and stuff like that. All of those things I'm just fascinated by. And just by putting all of those together and doing all of that research, each time one thing develops and then another. So like the David Yarrow thing, I didn't used to paint with that lower angle, but after discovering his work, I'm like, the next work that I do, I'm going to start incorporating that into my stuff. In the last probably 5 or 6 paintings now, if you look back at my work, all those lower angles. So this will speed up your process. I definitely recommend that you don't go crazy trying to pinpoint a style. Just find and enjoy styles that you love, surround yourself with them, and just let your subconscious do some of the lifting. So then step 3 is to experiment with different painting mediums, okay? So painting tutorials, time lapses, that's not what I'm talking about. They are not necessarily going to help you with your style, right? they are showing you a way to apply the medium, whether it be oil or acrylic or whatever, and in the style of the person that's teaching you, right? So I'm certainly not saying that they are not helpful, but you are learning that person's style. Does that make sense? So, I mean, if you absolutely love that style, then definitely go for that. But remember that you're going to iterate on that style based on all of the other things that you love when you've been doing the step 2 research, okay? So like I said, they're a great way of learning, but don't think of them as rules you need to follow. There used to be, in these classes that I used to go to, my mentor, Terry Isaac, I used to go to his classes, and people that would come would always ask for a recipe. So he would show his painting of the sky, or the colors of the autumn leaves on a tree, and they would be like, well, what's the recipe for that? Is it so much cerulean blue, and is it so much titanium white and stuff like that? And Terry was great. He would give it to them, but even he would say, don't just do what I'm doing, right? Iterate on that. And that's probably where I learned that from, right? So as you start to develop, you're going to need to try all different kinds of media to find the best way to communicate your expanding vision, right? So I tried literally everything that I can think of: acrylic, watercolor, oil, pencil, graphite, pen, felt pen, to try to get the effect that I was looking for. Initially, when I first started doing a lot of the painting that I was doing, Robert Bateman and Terry Isaac were painting in acrylic, so I thought I needed to paint in acrylic. But I couldn't get the subtle transitions, and maybe it is because I live in Alberta and it's very dry here, but our acrylic paint would dry like almost immediately. So I just couldn't get these transitions, and I was fighting with it. And eventually I switched over to oils and tried all the different kinds of oils, water-based oils, standard oils, alkyd oils, and I've kind of settled on, what works for me. And that isn't something I need to share, because I don't want you to necessarily do the same work as me. I want you to do your own work. I'm happy to do a video on how I do it, but that's not the point of this discussion. So you need to do that. You need to experiment with a whole bunch of different mediums in order to create that look, right, that you are going for. So over time, as you are doing step 2 and you're watching all of these visual artists' media, then you're going to start thinking, okay, you'll have these little aha moments, and you're going to say, I'm going to try to experiment with this, this style. And so you might, start slapping your paint down, and you might be like, oh, this isn't working for me. I'm not able to create this vision of what I want to do. So then you have a couple of things to try. So like I said, first of all, start trying different mediums and see if one of them works better for the style that you're trying to create. That might be where you're kind of hitting a roadblock. You may be wondering, why is there a dog in my lap? Well, the dog jumped up on the table and turned off the camera. So anyways, what I was saying, choosing the route of finding a mentor that you actually love. Like before the dog jumped on my lap, I was just going to tell a story really quickly about how I found Terry Isaac, who was a mentor of mine until he passed away in 2019. I wanted to study with Robert Bateman because at the time that was like the be all and end all for me of, where I wanted my artwork to go. And, Robert was way too popular to, take me on. And I think that I had met him at a show, and he suggested that I talk to Terry, because Terry Isaac was the protege of Robert. And there's a great story, actually I think it's on Terry's website, about how they actually met. how Robert discovered Terry's work. It's really, really quite touching. But I looked up Terry instead, and I talked with him, and we were able to develop a relationship where, I went out and took a few of his classes, basically his, his general studies classes with a whole bunch of people in them. And then as we got to know each other a little bit better, and he liked my work, I started going out to his home in BC, probably every 4 to 6 weeks with my new work. I'd throw them in my car, I'd drive out there and show him all my work. And this was a paid relationship. Even though I kind of considered us friends, I wanted to pay him because I wanted this to be a professional relationship. And so he would critique all of my work, and he would tell me what he liked and what he didn't. And I thought that worked very well for me. It moved the needle in my progress so much faster than if I had struggled to do it myself. So I 100% recommend that as you go through this research, that if you do find someone's work that really moves you, and they have a protege that is in any way available, definitely pay the money, study with them. It will make all the difference in the world. Yeah, and then back to the homogeneous work, I think we all need to be really careful that we don't try to follow a lot of rules while we are trying to develop this style. Take reference photos, for example. A lot of people, a lot of purists will tell you, do not use reference photos because the distortion the camera lens provides will make it obvious that you painted a photo instead of real life. So that's true, that's true. Depending on the focal length and stuff like that, you can compress the background, it can go out of focus, things that maybe the naked eye wouldn't necessarily pick up is very different than the way camera represents. And all of that's fine, but once again, you're driving someone into a specific style, saying that that's wrong, right? What if there is a style of photography that you as an artist really pick up on? Maybe it's just something as simple as color grading or whatever that you like, but what if there is something there that you really enjoy and you want to incorporate just that tiny little piece of it into your work, right? Painting from reference photos, there's nothing wrong with that. Just understanding that what the reference photo looks like, can be changed by the different lenses and everything else that you use in your camera, right? We do not want this all to lead us back to a group agreed upon image, a homogeneous image, so you're painting like everyone else. It's very important you're creating your own style, right? Don't get overly influenced by one person. Hope that all makes sense. We want to stand out, not blend in. All right, so the next step. So basically, it's going to be difficult for you to cultivate a unique style if you're not looking at other people's work. And I can't emphasize how important it is to consume work from other artists. Don't make the mistake of looking for work that is popular and trying to emulate it. Just find what speaks to you and let it sink in, right? You may not be able to identify what portion of the piece draws you in. And then some of these things are going to excite your mind and soul. They may not make sense until much further down the road, but it's important for you to discover them and let your subconscious do that work, right? If you're not familiar with how the subconscious works, well, obviously I'm not going to cover subconscious in here, but basically the idea is that while your mind is on other tasks like showering and walking, your subconscious is processing, and it's processing those things that you have been studying over the last few weeks. And that's where those aha moments come from that I talked about earlier, where you suddenly unconsciously combine some of the visualizations together. And then you think, well, what if I did this? And what if I did that and combined those two? And then you think, well, how would I do that? What medium would I use? Oh, maybe that might be felt markers or whatever. And then you're like, okay, you go and you get your felt markers and you you start, and suddenly it's not necessarily going to come to you like you're like, I've got a new style, but you're going to be like, man, this portion of this really works for me. And then you're going to have another aha moment, and then you're going to have another one, and you're going to keep studying, and you're going to have more and more and more. And very quickly, you're going to look back at your work from a year ago, and you're going to be like, wow, my vision has changed a lot. And then you're going to start seeing a real change in the shows that you get into, the jury things, because your work is different. Because those gallery owners and those jury selections, they are trying to fill a space with diverse and beautiful work. And when yours is something that is well done, that they have not seen before, they're going to clamor to get you in there. And that's kind of what happened to me. Not that people are like clamoring to get me into shows, but I went from like zero interest to, a much more respectable percentage of acceptance into shows and galleries and stuff like that. So that's it. Begin. Get started. Good luck. Please like and subscribe here, somewhere around here. Click like. Click subscribe. I would really appreciate it. It helps the algorithm on YouTube to let you know that you found this video helpful, and then hopefully that allows the algorithm to recommend it to other artists that might also find it valuable. So thank you so much. You guys have a great day.